And looking at these old photos of our garden from almost 20 years ago, it seems hard to believe how far this garden has become and how much we've transformed it from this boring old lawn to something that brings us incredible joy and also is now host to a large number of insects and animals and birds that regularly visit us as we sit out there having a cup of tea and just relaxing. In the opening video, I said I was going to teach you how to do this. And I think the first task is coming up with some sort of plan or purpose for your garden. Everyone is slightly different as to what they want it to do. Ours brings us great joy and peace, so we continue to focus on those things as well as the secondary focus, which is providing habitat for the amazing animals that we get. So it could be that you are purely wanting to focus on pollinators and providing habitat for them. And that's going to dictate a little bit some of the layout and the planning of your garden, depending on where you live and the climate that you have in your particular neighborhood. I like to think about sight lines as well, not only just from being outside in the garden in a seating area, whether that's a patio, whether that's a deck or something like that, but also from inside the house. What are the things that draw your attention? And it could be, as it is in our case, a shed that has become a focal point. It could be a water feature. It could be some sort of raised garden or rockery structure within the garden. These are things to think about as you sit out there. Where is my eye drawn? And is that something that I want it to be drawn to? Or is there something unsightly that I need to hide, or something that's practical, like a shed, that isn't quite so attractive, but I want to hide it, shield it using hardscape or plants to disguise aspects of the garden. So breaking up your plot of land into sections is a good way to start. I always recommend starting small and then building up from there. When we began planning parts of this garden, we focused on areas under the trees where we created paths. We removed a lot of old rock that we didn't want and plastic underlay that was used, which was starving the soil of nutrients and moisture, and then began expanding our garden from there. Little paths became a feature as well that were once sort of spaces between the island gardens. Eventually we began using those as pathways to create little nooks and crannies in the garden as well. It's quasi cottage garden, but using very much species native to the area, either specifically to Minnesota or to the region in general. As a reference point, we are zone 4 in terms of hardiness. We used to be zone 3, but the winters in the Twin Cities aren't quite as harsh as they used to be, and we don't have the same snowfall as we typically used to get as well, sadly. So these climate changes can also be an impact on your decision making with regards to what I'm building, what I'm planting, and where I'm putting it. Now, once you've sort of considered your sight lines, another thing to consider is the way in which plants grow, from a size point of view, from a height point of view, but also from a potential flowering point of view if you're thinking about pollination. We have a lot of Virginia bluebell in our yard, which was one of the earlier spring flowers, provides food for pollinators early in the spring. Then within several weeks, they tend to die back a little bit, become dormant. They're still alive. They don't die, although they sometimes look it when the heat comes in. And then those are superseded by other plants that are growing up around them that will then flower too and provide the next grazing spot for your animals or pollinators looking for food. So in other words, there are layers within layers of this planning structure, but the garden also is not a static thing. It's always in some state of flux. Later in the season, goldenrod will flower and go right into early fall, providing a lot of food for pollinators who go ballistic, trying to get as much food as they can before the hive or what have you winter's over. And also remembering even plants that appear to be dead can still provide habitat, can still provide in some cases food and shelter for insects and animals gearing up for the end of the season. Light is a particular thing to consider. If you have large trees, obviously that's going to provide shade, or if you have buildings nearby, that may also provide shade in the afternoon or the early morning. If you live in a box in the sun, well, then you need plants that are fully tolerant of all-day sun. So that, again, is going to dictate some of the planning and the responses that you have to that particular environment to create a suitable habitat or your particular bent or purpose of having your garden. Everyone's going to have some slight variation. Now, the next time we meet, we're going to talk a little bit about the specific choices that we've made and showcase some of the garden portions in our backyard and also our front yard, and what we have growing in them, and the names of some of those plants, that you can see how we have achieved this particular result, as I said, over the course of almost 20 years now. So you're looking at, obviously, a very, very established yard, but making good choices and planning appropriately, you can have spectacular results within 2 to 3 years. The old saying goes that when you first plant things, they sleep, the second year they creep, and then the third year they leap. So always plan in sort of 3 to 5 year increments as you embark on this particular journey. We'll see you next time.